Welcome to the Bloom Where You're Planted podcast from Never Too Late Cafe. I'm your host, Laura Womack. Each week, we sit down for a chat with someone just like you, someone who had an idea, a passion, a dream, or sometimes just a thought, and planted that seed, watched it grow into something they wanted to share with the world. If you have an idea for a topic or someone that would be a guest for the Bloom Where You're Planted podcast, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, where you can join our Never Too Late Cafe Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you. Today I have a very special guest with me, and it's Margaret Archambault. Did I say it correctly?
You did indeed.
Well, I had to practice with you a little bit, so welcome.
Right. Thank
so glad
you
to
for
have
having
you here.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Good. We're now in 2023. And so
I know it's crazy.
I know. So tell us where you're from originally.
Originally, I'm from South Bend, Indiana. I was born there, and but I moved to Louisville in 1987 after living here for a short period in the 70s. My mother was from Louisville and my father was from South Bend. So we went back and forth between the cities. But I ended up settling here permanently in 1987, and I've been here ever since.
Now, did you have a stint in Mississippi?
I did during a weird little period. I was living in South Bend, Indiana, and my mother was living in Gulfport, Mississippi, and I ended up going down there and living with her in 1985, I think, or 84, 85. I ended up graduating high school down there, which was a kind of a little bit of a culture shock. I was coming from a northern Indiana school to a southern Mississippi school, and the credit systems were so different. My senior year, I ended up only having to take one class, so it was kind of nice. I lived on the beach as a senior and I was out of school by like 9 in the morning or something. But then we ended up leaving after graduation and coming back to Louisville.
That would be any high school students, well, most, I'd say, their dream.
It was pretty awesome. I have to admit, it was a lot of fun back then.
Well, and the beach part, that has to be.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. You get off of school and, head down, go down to, not downtown, you head down to the coast. It was, like 2 miles or something. It was really close.
Wow. So currently you are principal artist in residence at what gallery?
At Tim Faulkner Gallery. I've been there for 13 years. We're partners. We've kind of built that place up from a tiny little one-room place into a really massive place, and then went back down to a smaller place. And now we don't have any place. We're looking this spring to reopen downtown.
So didn't you have a move like in the last few months? Was that what that you're referring to?
Yeah, it was kind of unexpected. May of the 22 was just an incredibly difficult month. I lost my mother unexpectedly. We they had to close the gallery unexpectedly. And it all happened within 3 days of each other. And it was very stressful, to say the least. But now we've got a spot that we moved things to downtown, but we're not sure how that's working out now. Another larger corporation has come in, and they've got really deep pockets and are offering all this money to the building owner, who's probably going to take it. I mean, it's hard to say no to that kind of money. So right now we have the second floor of a building and there's studio spaces in it, but we haven't reopened the gallery portion yet. But I'm just not sure yet what we're doing. We're kind of holding out until spring to see how it transpires. But yeah.
Oh, winter's not a good time to make a move anyway.
No, and it was just too much to deal with. And then the holidays came up and it was just like, okay, forget it. We'll just leave the studios in place for now, get through that, and then we'll look at a different location in the springtime. So,
Well,
yeah.
I've known quite a few people that have rent space, and through the years, it's, those unexpected things, and people don't realize what it's like to, it's not just changing your stationery, it's how you
Oh,
do business.
everything, absolutely everything. And, it was really an unexpected kind of shock to the system, if you will, at a really bad time, but personally. So, you know, but that's the C for you, right? And I always make these analogies are to artists that I've worked with over the last, like I said, 13 years. Um, the difference between, the river and the sea. And, it's sometimes it can be really comfortable to be on the river. You go from, stop at each little port and you refuel and you get to do things, and you move on down the river, and it's all very, very calm. And, you kind of stay in that kind of thing. And that sometimes though, when you go full right off the cliff and right into the ocean, right into the sea, it's a lot rougher. You're dealing with, unknown animals underneath you. You're dealing with, unforeseen storms coming at you. And that therein lies the challenge, and a lot of people, once those things kind of happen, it knocks them off. And, they give up, or they quit, or they decide that, oh, maybe this, my passion isn't what I thought it should be. And, all these things happen. It's making it through those moments. And I know people have said that it's almost cliche at this point, but it really is true, that you can navigate the sea with all these unknowns. Then eventually you'll reach shore. You will reach land. You will survive, and you will kind of be able to look back and say, "Wow, I can't believe I went through that, and here I am."
That's a great analogy, because I know several people that have questioned what they loved when
Right,
there was a shift.
right, right, and
And
that happens, and that's when people quit. And
mm,
I've seen it happen time and time again with bands and, you know musicians and painter, everyone in that creative world. I've seen a lot of people thrive on that, but I've seen a lot of people quit through it and just say, you know what, I just don't do that anymore. I mean, I know a
mm,
particular painter that I have in mind, that super talented painter, just comes out of him without any real, I mean, just it just flows out of him. And, went through a really rough time, and the next thing he's quit. He doesn't paint anymore. And it's like,
mm.
well, I just can't imagine getting to that point. And I know there are a lot of people out there that, and that's some of the things I was looking forward to kind of talking about today, was that, a lot of times we tell ourselves, well, I guess I shouldn't jump ahead. I should let you ask the questions before I start just
Oh,
ramble.
that's all right. That's all right. Well, it is so true, because I have known people that have said, well, it just wasn't meant to be,
Right,
or destiny, or it's just not in the cards for me, or what, any of those
right,
cliches.
right.
And when it's a challenge,
It
it's
is.
not.
It's not for the faint of heart. It really isn't. To be an artist, in any category of art, and in my mind, if you're, a fabulous crocheter, then be the best crocheter that you can be. If you're a doesn't matter what it is. If you feel the need to create something out of nothing, then that's something that you should do. And whether things try to stop you along the way, Tim used to refer to them as sharp, pointy rocks on the mountain, or, if you've got brambles in your bushes or whatever, things that are make you feel like you shouldn't be doing that. For me, when I was younger, it was, you can't make a living as an artist. You
Oh,
can't do this. Don't do that. You need to keep the job in sales and marketing and all this stuff, so that, and you just do this art thing on the side, and for years I struggled with that. And, finally, about 15 years ago, I said, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to switch that. I'll do, the art thing is my primary thing, and the, sales and doing other stuff on the side, that can be the hobby. Because, I was just really driven to prove people that were telling me I couldn't do it wrong. you know we get told of all these things that we need. Need is a funny thing. If you really look at what you need, you really should resort to a Maslow kind of hierarchy. You need clothing, shelter, and food. That's all you need. The rest of it is want. And if you can meet the needs of shelter, food, and clothing, then you can do whatever the heck you want, right? You can find a way to make your knit hats the most popular knit hats, especially with our ability now with technology to put it out there for the entire world to see. You really have an opportunity to follow your passion, and if you then you get the art. Sometimes I've had the argument back, well, I don't have the right materials, right? I really can't afford paint. I can't afford canvas, or I don't have the right studio to record in. I can't really keep track of my music, or I can't really write because I don't have the right space. We have these idealistic images in our mind of what an artist studio looks like, be it a musical studio or a writer studio or a painter studio. The truth of the matter is, all you really need is a piece of paper and a pencil. If you're a painter and you don't have paint, then write out your ideas for the next painting when you do have paint, right? If you're a writer and you don't have the right place to write, you still have a paper and pencil. You can write in the back seat of your car. If you're a musician, you can write the lyrics or learn how to read music so that you can write the actual score. Whatever it is, the idea of what you need to be able to do that often stops you. So I like to say, don't allow the lack of something or somewhere ideal prevent you from creating something that's real, right? So if you're writing a song, or you're writing a poem, or you're painting a painting, or whatever it is, you don't need the ideal image in your mind to do that. All you need is what's in your mind, and you can create that something from nothing and make it real. And that I think is a really important thing, that a lot of people stop themselves from following their dream or their passion simply because they're not in the ideal situation to do it. But if you live your life to create and stay devoted to creating, life will create a way for you to do it. And I have learned that time and time and time again. And that is probably one of the biggest piece of advice I would give to any artist out there, is that if you stay devoted to what you're creating, life will somehow make it possible for you to do it. I know it sounds magical and mystical and all that kind of stuff, but the truth of the matter is, just when you think you can't do this anymore, something happens. And what that it is, I don't know, and I don't claim to know, but I know it's there. And I know that every single time I've pushed myself through those moments and stayed devoted to what I wanted and felt driven to do, suddenly, life creates a path for me to be able to do it. And you won't know that, though, if you quit. If you stop and throw in the towel, well, you never get that answer. And you just got to get out of your head when it's, because I'm a bit of a hoarder myself, because I won't say I'm not that bad. I'm not going to be on a TV show or anything, but I do have piles and piles and piles of stuff that I'm going to do something with someday. I'm going to I'm going to use this in a painting, or I'm going to create this big installation, or I'm going to do this or that. So I have a lot of stuff around you that can be distracting, right, to your thought process. And I understand that concept, but in reality, if we look at those things as the inspiration and don't let it be our way out, because it's much easier to not do it and have a reason why you don't. Um,
Yeah,
like
that's a good point.
I mean, it's a lot easier. It's a whole lot less stressful. That's the difference between the river and the sea again, right? It's really easy to go down the river. I collect my check every week, every stop, I get my money. I'll go paint on the side. But if that's all I want to do, then that's wonderful. If I'm satisfied and fulfilled by that, then terrific. But if you're on the river and you don't feel satisfied, then I would encourage you to get a bigger boat and go out into the sea and just jump with no net. Don't expect anyone to save you. Just really put yourself out there and watch the way things manifest right in front of your face. It's just, it's really an incredible thing. You had, before this meeting, you had sent me a few little, ideas on prompts and such. And one of the things you asked me was, what does bloom where you're planted mean to me? And I heard, and it was funny because I heard this phrase one day, 3 or 4 days ago, that really related to that idea. And it went something like this. It's, if you've been working hard and staying true to your artistic goals, whatever those may be, and you just feel like you're not getting anywhere and you're spinning your wheels and no one's recognizing you, or you're not getting what it is that you're looking for, and suddenly you feel like you've put so much into it, and you're in this, and then suddenly everything just seems really dark. When you get to that point, that's when you need to realize that you've been planted, and that's why it's so dark. And now, when it's at its darkest, once you're planted, now is when you're going to start blooming. And you have to continue to nourish yourself and continue to feed your art and continue to do it, even though it's dark. And then you'll come above that soil line and start to bloom. And I thought, wow, that's exactly what I think I try to tell people all the time.
You are full of wisdom. I tell you, I think you could write a book on or be a coach.
When I was in college, I was I went to university late in life because, of course, as I had mentioned before, family and friends, my family owned a business and I worked in the family business and I didn't need to go to college. I painted as a hobby. Someday you're going to take over the business, this whole thing. And then, one day I decided, what, I need to go back to school. I need to do this. And so I did. And I went to Spalding University here in Louisville, downtown. And I tell you what, my experience there was so, so good. It changed my entire direction. But I really thought I was going to focus on writing. And because I actually have, it's insane to say, I think I want to say it's about 22,000 words written for this novel that I was writing, and just all these poems. And I've had a few things published, and I've done some articles for a few art magazines and some other things. And I still have a great deal of interest in writing, and I keep all of that stuff. And I'm still I write quietly if anything, I would say now, my career as an artist. I'm a full-time artist and painter, but my hobby is writing. So I'm able to kind of do that if I get tired of staring at, because I work on multiple canvases at one time. So if I get a little tired of that, then I can sit down and write. And I just love getting the thoughts out of my head. And I love the way pen and paper feel. I'm real freak for the way pen feels on paper. And so there was a time where I really thought writing was going to be my focus, because I feel like there's so much stuff I need to tell people. If everyone knew this, then no one would have to be dissatisfied or unhappy, you really do get to choose. And, perhaps, in the future, as I get older, my memoirs will come out and the truth of everything will be given in those. But yeah, right now I'm focused on the painting, but I do love to write. I really do.
So let's dive into your art. You have what sort of mediums do you typically utilize?
Primarily, I'm an oil painter. I paint with oil. I do use acrylics occasionally. I mainly use those like if I'm recently I did an abstract expressionism class with some artists in a private studio here in Louisville, actually at Jill Baker's studio. I did it twice. And I'll use acrylics in those situations because they dry so quickly and I can demonstrate lots of different things at one time. But primarily I work with oil, and I kind of work in three categories, three buckets, if you will.
Mhm.
Straight abstract expressionism, where there's and non-representational work, so there's no real image. It's more about um, the paint on the surface and mark making, which I still think is one of the purest forms of truth that there is. Um, it's a very satisfying way to paint, and I really get inspired when I'm painting in a non-representational way, simply because it leads me to things in the other categories. And on my website, there's a category called depictive abstraction. Well,
Right.
I have coined that myself. That's not an official term yet, probably after I'm dead. But basically, basically for me, straight abstraction and expressionism. The abstraction is taking an object or a thing and abstracting an image from that thing, whereas the expressionism is more emotive, it's more from internal, it's more how you feel, it's more about the process. Well, with depictive abstraction, for me, I feel like I'm not necessarily abstracting. Like, for example, if I had a basket of flowers next to a window, I that doesn't inspire me personally. I use the example. Oh, a better example. Everybody is familiar with Vincent van Gogh's painting of the chair in his little yellow chair in his small place in France. And for me, I'm more interested in discovering the comfort level or depicting the comfort level of that chair rather than the chair itself.
Mm.
So how do I do that? Right. So I might take elements that I think that chair would feel like. It looks like a hard chair. It might poke you a little bit in the cane and the seat, but yet the room is very inspiring in a lot of other ways, and use those things to create a different sort of figurative image that usually involves a figure of some sort, but it's not abstracted from anything specific. It's depicting something that's coming from my own mind in that way. It's more about depicting a moment, depicting a memory, depicting a universal belief or a universal problem. Um, we all have the problem of living and the living and getting through those things. And so a lot of my paintings, especially in that depictive abstract category, relate to that idea itself, and exploring those ideas and putting it in front of you so that the viewer can kind of walk into that idea. And then the third area is historical collage. I have a lot, and I mean a lot, of antique paper and books. But the books and paper that I use in my collages, even though they are authentically antique, they come from books or paper, whatever, that a collector wouldn't want because their condition is so bad overall. as you know, I keep the really great paper just because I love it. But I have a lot of it. So I like to use those items to, like, for example, one of my favorite books was Catcher in the Rye, who, you know, cliche again, but I love Holden Caulfield. I do. But I bought on eBay like 10 copies of the same edition of a 1970s paperback edition. So it was really inexpensive, and was able to take the pages out of those and not lose the text on the back of the page by using the other side of the page, and go through and underline and highlight and mark it up just like you shouldn't, right? And mark it all up and all those great quotes. And then I incorporated those into a canvas that actually went to New York last Christmas, and showed in Manhattan on the Lower East Side, on Orchard Street, which is becoming the hotbed of art right now in New York. But that piece is a tribute to the Catcher in the Rye, and it's called, you know, Holden Caulfield in New York. And I took those pages and created this sort of figurative piece of Holden and all these kind of people he comes in contact with. And if you look closely at the piece and you get up on it, you can see, you know, the quotes that are used in each of those figures. And, you know, it turns into this crazy complex thing. But I find that very satisfying. So those are kind of the three areas that I focus on as a painter.
Well, while we're on that particular project, how did it end up in New York? I mean, how did you approach them? They approached you? Did someone say, I know someone? Or
No,
how did they?
actually, I'm friends with someone in New York who I'm friends with also on social media. And one of her friends, you know, one of those kind of weird
Mm-hmm.
6 degree things, ended up being like 3 degrees, and was a curator at a gallery on Orchard Street, and had sent me a message and said they had a show coming up, and you know, they were interested in that particular piece and one other. If I was interested in sending them, they would show those for that exhibition, which obviously I said yes. And I shipped the pieces to them. And lucky enough, this goes back to what I said before about how if you live your life to create, life will create a way for you to do it. You know, I had no idea how I was going to be able to pull off paying for the shipping for these pieces. And then a piece sold, which gave me just enough money to ship the pieces to them. And then I thought, well, that's okay. I can't go, you know, but boy, you know, how cool is it that the pieces, I'll see pictures, you know, blah, blah, blah. Within 5 days of me shipping that work, a collector in Los Angeles that I have contacted me and purchased 3 big canvases from me, giving me more than enough money to buy tickets, hotel room, a whole 9 yards. So I was able to be there for the opening and the exhibition. I got to spend, you know, 3 days in New York. It was a fabulous experience. But if I hadn't have taken that chance and done and shipped that, knowing that I couldn't go, knowing I couldn't be there, I would have never, the next part wouldn't have happened, you know, or I believe it wouldn't have. And, you know, and so I ended up getting to do something that I had never done. And it was a great experience. And I'm super grateful for it. And I give gratitude every single morning when I get out of bed for whatever is coming my way that day.
Well, you know, a lot of people talk about social media and all the negative sides of it. And I can tell you, yeah, it's there.
Oh, there
However, however, the connections
is.
you
They're
just
unbeatable.
described, I know you just described a whole scenario of
Yes.
something that happened that would be many people's
Yeah.
dream.
Yeah. You know, and that's not the only, you know, and I'm one of those people too that, you know, there's a lot about social media that is very negative. But if I personally, I don't engage, right? My social media is completely focused, very maybe 1% that's not about my art. If you were to go
Mm-hmm.
to my Facebook or my Instagram, or, well, I don't really use my Tumblr anymore, but any of those things, it's about my art. You rarely see me post something personal or get involved in some kind of ridiculous conversation that I would never have with someone if I was face to face with them. These are the ability to hide behind a keyboard and get on the train of fighting for things that obviously people should be fighting for. I mean, I think it's just a whole lot easier to not be a jerk. Just don't be a jerk. If you go through life and you're not a jerk, then you'll probably be okay. So I focus my social media only on my art, and that's it. I really don't share the personal stuff very much. It's funny, my best friend, I'll put up this happy, oh, look, I finished this new piece I'm working on in my studio, when she knows I've got this or that going on in my personal life. One time she saw me post this really tearful little post about a new piece I finished, and she called me that night. She's like, what is going on? I thought this, and this. And I'm like, it is, Michelle. I mean, it is. This is, so I'm not sharing that. My social media is specifically for the ability to share my art with people in the best way possible and reach the most people possible. I had a woman in New Jersey see a piece that she really loved right across the river, and she contacted me through Instagram and asked me if I could recreate a piece in the same way, but twice the size. I mean, this was a huge commission from someone I never met before. She totally came through. She gave me half down. I bought the big piece, shipped it to her. She paid me the other half, sent me pictures of it in her grand, beautiful home in New Jersey. And none of that would have happened had I not been using my Instagram. So, I mean, I think it really comes down to how you use your social media. Just don't engage with the negativity. Just, back away from it. There's no point.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. We've got so many things that we could be doing. Thanks for joining us for part 1 of our chat with Margaret Archambault. Join us next week for part 2.